My husband twisted every conversation, making me doubt my own sanity. "You're paranoid," he'd say. But when I found hidden documents, I knew I wasn't crazy. I stayed silent, gathering proof. The night I revealed everything, his world collapsed in ways she never expected. "Stop trying to twist everything around, Jason. I know what I saw." I gripped the edge of our kitchen counter, my knuckles turning white. The granite felt cool against my palms, a sharp contrast to the heat rising in my face. "There you go again, making things up in your head." Jason's lips curled into that familiar smirk as he leaned against the doorframe. "This is exactly why your last article got rejected. You see conspiracies everywhere, Michaela." The mention of my rejected story felt like a punch to the gut. As a journalist, my credibility was everything, and he knew exactly where to hit to make it hurt the most. "My name is Michaela Anderson, and at 34, I'm starting to question everything I thought I knew about my marriage. 5 years ago, I was a rising star at the Houston Chronicle, known for my sharp instincts and attention to detail. Now I second-guess every observation, every memory, every gut feeling I have." Tonight's argument started because I saw Jason having lunch with Sarah from his office, the same Sarah he swore he never sees outside of work. When I brought it up, he didn't just deny it. He made me feel like I was losing my mind for even suggesting it. "I was at client meetings all day," he said, his voice taking on that patronizing tone I've grown to hate. "You probably saw someone who looked like me. Remember last month when you thought you saw me at the mall?" I did remember, or at least I thought I did. But now, like so many other memories, it felt hazy, uncertain. Was I really seeing things? The more I tried to hold on to the details of what I saw today, the more they seemed to slip away. As I stood there in our kitchen watching Jason's confident smile, something caught my eye. A receipt had fallen from his pocket when he came in. It was partially visible under the edge of the counter from Cafe Luna, dated today, the same place where I saw him with Sarah. My heart started racing, but I forced myself to stay calm. For the first time in months, I had something concrete, something real, something he couldn't twist around. And that's when I knew I needed more proof. I met Jason at a charity gala I was covering for the paper. He was charming, successful, and seemed genuinely interested in my work. "A beautiful journalist with both brains and ambition," he'd said, making me blush. What more could a man want? Looking back now, I should have noticed how he always emphasized my appearance before my abilities. Our whirlwind romance was the talk of my office. Jason would send elaborate flower arrangements to my desk and surprise me with lunch deliveries. My colleagues swooned over the gestures, but Rachel, my editor, seemed less impressed. "Just be careful," she'd warned one day. "Men who love to create public spectacles often have private agendas." I dismissed her concern as cynicism from someone who'd been in the industry too long. The changes happened so gradually that I barely noticed them at first. Jason suggested I turn down the promotion to senior investigative reporter because it would mean more hours away from home. "You're already so stressed, honey. I'm just looking out for you." When I pushed back, he reminded me how my last big story had nearly given me a nervous breakdown, conveniently forgetting to mention that my anxiety had stemmed from him questioning my sources and methodology at every turn. My relationship with Rachel became strained after I declined the promotion. She tried to talk to me about it, but I defended Jason's concern for my well-being. "He just wants what's best for me," I insisted, even as something in my gut twisted at the words. Rachel's disappointment was palpable, and soon our weekly mentoring sessions dwindled to brief hallway exchanges. I did keep one promise to myself, maintaining my small personal savings account. It wasn't much, just a few $1,000 I'd set aside before meeting Jason, but it was mine alone. He didn't know about it, and something always stopped me from mentioning it. The same instinct that made me keep my old journals locked in my desk at work rather than bringing them home. The receipt from Cafe Luna still burned in my mind. I wanted to confront him with it, to force him to acknowledge the truth. But experience had taught me he would only spin another web of denial and confusion. Instead, I slipped it into my wallet, next to an old business card Rachel had given me months ago. On the back, she'd written, "When you're ready to talk, I'm here." I noticed my hands were shaking slightly as I closed my wallet. The woman I used to be, the confident reporter who could spot a lie at 20 paces, felt like a stranger now. But somewhere inside me, that investigative instinct was awakening again, and it was telling me something was very, very wrong. The next morning, I decided to follow my old reporter's instincts. Instead of heading straight to the office, I stopped by Cafe Luna. The friendly barista remembered Jason. He was apparently a regular. "Oh, yeah, him and Sarah from the firm are always here," she said casually. "They have the corner table by the window." My stomach lurched. Not only had Jason been lying about the lunches, but he was enough of a regular to have a usual table. I ordered a coffee to steady my nerves, and that's when I overheard two women talking at the counter. "Did you see Sarah's Instagram post? The one with her work husband? The cute financial advisor? They look so cozy in all their lunch photos. I nearly dropped my cup. With trembling fingers, I pulled out my phone and searched for Sarah's profile. It was private, but her profile picture made my blood run cold. It was her and Jason, heads together, laughing at what was clearly their usual table. When I got to the office, I had 3 missed calls from Jason and a text. Hope you're not still upset about yesterday. You know how you get when you're stressed. Love you. I stared at the message until the words blurred. 5 years of similar messages flooded my memory. Always so caring on the surface. Always implying that I was the problem. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out my old journals, flipping through entries that documented similar incidents. The pattern was suddenly crystal clear. A knock on my door made me jump. It was Andrea from the city desk. Hey, did you hear? They're restructuring the investigative team. Rachel's leaving. What? Why? Rachel had been with the paper for 15 years. Official story is budget cuts, but rumor has it there was pressure from some powerful people who weren't happy with her latest corruption story. Andrea lowered her voice. Apparently, someone complained to the board about her aggressive reporting style. My mind raced back to last week's charity board meeting, the one Jason had attended as a new member. He'd mentioned something about having an interesting conversation about journalistic integrity. I felt sick. Rachel had been my mentor, my champion, and now she was being pushed out. Had Jason played a role in this too? Was this punishment for her trying to warn me? I pulled out my phone and opened my recording app. It was time to start documenting everything. No more doubting myself. No more letting him twist reality. I had been a damn good investigative reporter once, and I still knew how to gather evidence. But as I set up the app, a notification popped up on my screen. A calendar reminder for dinner at his parents' house tonight. I had to play this carefully. If Jason suspected anything, he would find a way to make me doubt everything all over again. Dinner at the Winter's house was always an exercise in keeping up appearances. Jason's mother Clara fussed over him while his father Robert dominated conversations with lengthy monologues about his law practice. Tonight though, something felt different. There was tension in the air, unspoken words hanging heavy between bites of Clara's pot roast. So, Michaela, Clara began, setting down her wine glass. Jason tells me you've been struggling at work lately. Having trouble with your stories? I caught Jason's slight smirk behind his napkin. Actually, I'm doing quite well, I replied, keeping my voice steady. In fact, I'm working on a piece about deceptive business practices. I saw Jason's smirk falter. Oh? What kind of practices? Robert suddenly seemed interested, leaning forward. Financial manipulation, hidden relationships, conflicts of interest. I took a sip of water, watching Jason's knuckles whiten around his fork. It's amazing what people think they can hide. Clara jumped in quickly. Jason's been doing so well at the firm. Did he tell you about his promotion? Promotion? This was the first I'd heard of it. No. He hasn't mentioned it. It's not final yet, Mom, Jason cut in sharply. I was waiting for the right time to share the news. The position opened up after Sarah's husband took that job in Denver, Clara continued, oblivious to Jason's discomfort. Such a shame she had to resign. You two worked so well together. The room spun slightly. Sarah was married and leaving. I managed to keep my expression neutral as I processed this information. Later that night as we drove home, Jason was unusually quiet. I broke the silence. When were you going to tell me about Sarah leaving? Don't start, Michaela. It just happened today. Like the lunch at Cafe Luna just happened? The words slipped out before I could stop them. Jason's grip tightened on the steering wheel. I told you you're imagining things. This is exactly why I don't share work news with you anymore. You always twist everything into some crazy conspiracy. I saw the receipt, Jason. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. What receipt? Are you going through my pockets now? This is getting pathetic. Stop gaslighting me. The words exploded out of me. I know what's real. I know what I saw. Jason pulled the car over so suddenly that I jerked forward against my seatbelt. His voice was dangerously calm. You know what's real? What's real is that you're having another breakdown. What's real is that I've spent years trying to protect you from yourself. What's real is that you're about one paranoid accusation away from losing your job. And believe me, after the stunt you pulled at dinner, mentioning deceptive practices that could happen sooner than you think, the threat was clear. I fell silent, my mind racing. I had thought I was ready to confront him, but I had underestimated his ability to turn things around on me. As we pulled into our driveway, my phone buzzed. A text from Rachel. Got your message. Meeting approved sources at Crossroads Diner tomorrow, 7 a.m. Some things you need to know. A glimmer of hope. But as I deleted the message, I caught Jason watching me in the darkness, his eyes reflecting the dashboard lights like a predator's. The Crossroads Diner was nearly empty when I arrived, my recorder safely hidden in my purse. Rachel sat in a corner booth, 2 untouched coffees in front of her. But she wasn't alone. Sarah, Jason's colleague, sat beside her looking nervous but determined. "I'm leaving for Denver tomorrow," Sarah said without preamble as I slid into the booth. "But there are things you need to know about Jason. About the firm. About what really happened to your stories." Rachel placed a USB drive on the table. "Financial records," she explained. "Sarah's been gathering evidence for months." "Evidence of what?" My mouth felt dry. "Jason isn't just manipulating you." Sarah's voice was barely above a whisper. "He's been manipulating company accounts, funneling money through shell corporations, and he's been using your reputation as a journalist to help cover it up." My hands trembled as Sarah explained how Jason had been systematically undermining my credibility for years. Every time I got close to a story that might expose financial irregularities at his firm, he would start his campaign of subtle gaslighting, making me doubt my instincts until I abandoned the lead. "The board meeting about Rachel wasn't about journalistic integrity," Sarah continued. "Jason convinced them that she was encouraging your delusional tendencies by assigning you investigative pieces. He showed them your therapy records." "My what?" The room seemed to tilt. "He's had access to your private therapy sessions for the past 2 years, Rachel said gently. "Dr. Martinez is his cousin. Those sessions, they weren't about helping you. They were about gathering ammunition." The coffee in front of me grew cold as they laid out the extent of Jason's deception. The therapy sessions I'd agreed to attend at his suggestion, where I'd poured out my doubts and fears, had been nothing but a source of information for him to use against me. Dr. Martinez had been feeding him everything, helping him perfect his manipulation. "There's more," Sarah said, pulling out her phone. She showed me photos of documents, text messages, and emails. "Jason's been positioning himself to take over the firm's executive position. He needed someone unstable in his life, someone he could point to as the reason he's been distracted whenever questions about the missing money came up. That's why he pursued you so aggressively," Rachel added. "A journalist with a history of uncovering corporate fraud? Making you doubt yourself wasn't just about control, it was insurance." The realization hit me like a physical blow. Every romantic gesture, every seeming act of concern, every suggestion about my mental health, it had all been calculated. I wasn't just a wife being gaslighted. I was a liability being managed. "Why are you showing me this now?" I asked Sarah. "Because he's getting sloppy. The amount of money involved is bigger than ever, and he's starting to make mistakes." When I confronted him, he threatened to destroy my career. Said no one would believe me over him, just like no one would believe you. I reached for my purse, fingers brushing against my recorder. 2 weeks of secret recordings suddenly felt insignificant compared to what I now knew. "But combined with Sarah's evidence, I need copies of everything," I said. My journalist's instincts finally drowning out the voice of doubt Jason had planted in my head. "And then we need to talk about how we're going to take him down." That evening, I carefully copied Sarah's evidence onto my own secured drive while Jason was at the gym. My hands shook as I examined the financial records, text messages, and emails that proved his deception. I had just finished when I heard his car pull into the driveway. "You seem distracted," Jason said over dinner, studying my face. "Everything okay at work?" "Just tired," I replied, forcing a smile. "Actually, I've been thinking about what you said, about my mental health. Maybe we should invite your parents over this weekend? I'd like to talk to everyone about getting help." The hint of a satisfied smirk played at his lips. "That's very mature of you, honey. I'll call them tonight." The next day, Rachel helped me prepare the final pieces of our plan. We organized the evidence, including my recordings, Sarah's documents, and statements from others who'd been threatened by Jason. Everything was ready for Saturday's dinner. But on Friday afternoon, my blood ran cold when I checked my email. There was a message from the newspaper's board of directors requesting an immediate meeting about my concerning behavior and mental fitness for journalism. Jason had somehow found out. I rushed to Rachel's office, but she was already on the phone with HR. "They're suspending you pending an investigation," she said, covering the mouthpiece. "Jason sent them videos, apparently from your therapy sessions with Dr. Martinez." My mind raced. The therapy sessions had been recorded? Of course, they had. Jason never left anything to chance. "The board meeting is in an hour," Rachel continued. "They're going to try to discredit you before you can expose anything." I felt the walls closing in. Everything we'd planned was falling apart. If I lost my credibility now, no one would believe the evidence, just as Jason had planned all along. That's when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Need to talk. Important. Clara Winters, Jason's mother?" I hesitated, then agreed to meet her at a cafe near the newspaper office. I had 40 minutes before the board meeting. It was worth the risk. Clara was already there when I arrived, clutching her designer handbag like a shield. "I found something," she said without preamble, pulling out an old leather planner. "After that dinner, when you mentioned deceptive practices, I started going through Robert's old records." She opened the planner, revealing handwritten notes about offshore accounts, shell corporations, and a familiar name, Jason's firm. Robert wasn't just Jason's father, Clara said, her voice shaking. He was his mentor in everything, including fraud. They've been doing this for years using wives and girlfriends as covers. I was Robert's unstable wife 30 years ago. My recorder was already running in my pocket as Clara detailed decades of financial manipulation, gaslighting, and corporate fraud. This wasn't just about Jason anymore. It was about a generational pattern of abuse and corruption. I checked the time, 20 minutes until the board meeting. Clara, would you be willing to come with me? There are some people who need to hear this. She straightened her spine, a lifetime of fear and doubt falling away from her face. Yes, it's time someone believed us. I walked into the boardroom with Clara by my side, finding exactly what I expected. Jason standing at the front, playing clips from my therapy sessions on the projector. His father, Robert, sat among the board members looking smug. Their expressions of concern were so perfectly practiced, so convincingly sincere. Michaela, Jason said smoothly, we were just discussing your episodes. Yes. I can see that, I replied, plugging my USB drive into the laptop. But I think the board might be interested in some other episodes as well. The screen filled with financial records as I played Sarah's evidence. Then came my recordings of Jason's gaslighting, followed by Clara's devastating testimony about the generational pattern of fraud and psychological abuse. Mother, what are you doing? Jason's voice cracked, but Clara stood firm. Exactly what you taught me to never do. Telling the truth. Robert jumped to his feet, but the board chairman raised his hand. Mr. Winters, sit down. Mrs. Anderson, please continue. The police and SEC are already on their way, I announced, watching the color drain from Jason's face. They're particularly interested in those offshore accounts you and your father have been hiding. As if on cue, officers entered the boardroom. The look of utter disbelief on Jason's face as they read him his rights was something I would never forget. No one will believe you, he tried one last time as they led him away. You're just being crazy again. No, Jason, I replied calmly. I'm finally being sane. The story broke the next day, not just in our paper, but across all major news outlets. Corporate dynasty falls, father-son fraud scheme exposed. Jason and Robert's arrest made headlines, and their elaborate web of financial manipulation and psychological abuse finally came to light. Clara moved in with her sister, starting therapy with a real counselor. Sarah's evidence proved invaluable to the prosecution, and she found a better position at a firm in Denver. Rachel was reinstated at the paper with a formal apology and a promotion. As for me, I took on a new beat. Investigating corporate fraud and psychological abuse in the workplace. My first series of articles focused on helping others recognize the signs of gaslighting in professional settings. The response was overwhelming. Hundreds of people came forward with their own stories. I ran into Jason one last time at the courthouse during his sentencing. He looked smaller somehow, his confident smirk replaced by defeated resignation. When the judge announced the 15-year sentence, he turned to look at me, perhaps expecting to see doubt in my eyes. Instead, he found clarity. That evening, I sat at my desk looking at the last picture of us together, the one from our anniversary dinner where it all began to unravel. I deleted it and opened a new document. The cursor blinked, waiting for words that had been trapped inside me for too long. Trust your instincts, I typed. They're trying to tell you something. For the first time in years, I knew mine were finally leading me in the right direction.